Hi friends, it's Deanna Willison with Our Blooming Catholic Life, and I'm here now with the review on Bringing It to the Table by Wendell on farming and food with an introduction by Michael Pollan. So what I got from reading the book, it is a very good book. I will say a lot of the ideas in it were not super new to me. It's a lot about agriculture and farming and sustainability. And he started writing, it seems to be really in the 70s and 80s through now. And so this is an anthology of his work, which I don't know, maybe they said that somewhere, but I wasn't really catching that before. So this is actually an anthology of his work. So if you need to grab just one, this may be the one for you. Now, a lot of these ideas weren't super new to me. As a child, I was huge fan of Jean Stratton Porter, and a lot of the ideas in this book she actually was talking about in the end of the 1800s, early 1900s. And so I grew up with those concepts, and this wasn't terribly new to me, but it gave me a new language. And here's what I mean. In the first section, the introduction was very much a heartfelt introduction by Michael Pollan, who appears to be possibly an agriculture reporter, and he thinks like this is the time to really have this conversation, and that's why this anthology was so important to him. And he really is a fan of Wendell Berry, but for many reasons, heartfelt, as well as just the way he can relate things to people. He can say things in a language that you understand, and he doesn't condemn you or like yell or point his finger on his environmental concerns, but he lets you know that it's important and it needs to be addressed now. And so it's his deep-seated, I think, love of Wendell Berry that brought on possibly this anthology or his involvement in it. So part one is simply called farming. Now, if you don't know a lot about farming and economics and farming practices, this is the section for you. It's going to give you a brief overview of what farming used to be, what it is now, how it affects our economy. There are some big gems in here that I took here. For independent farmers of the traditional family farm, animal factories now substitute hired laborers who at work are confined in the same unpleasant and unhealthy situation as the animals. Production at such a cost is temporary. The cost is finally a diminishment of the human and ecological capacity to produce. So he's talking a lot about in that section about how we've shifted from family farms to factory farms. And even some families are like franchises of factory farms, and they're not really seeing a good return on their investment. Who is seeing that mysterious return on investment? It's not the family farmer, because we have to look at why farmers have such a high rate of suicide right now, why the family farms are disappearing despite all the aid given to farmers, because that aid is supporting this factory farm idea, but the factory farm is an unhealthy idea, and he's going to go into that more, and he does it in a very good way, talking about the dangers of it, because the factory is a factory at its base is concerned about production, not about the preservation of the raw materials. Or it says like, and government is concerned about creating jobs more than it is about helping people keep the jobs they already have. And he talks about Professor Eichert is telling you 3 cornerstones above sustainability are ecological soundness, economic viability, and social justice. So he's saying you can't really separate those 3 things. So when you look at the factory farm, is it ecologically sound? No, because it's normally one cash crop that's grown. And so the soil used to be rotating the crops, and each crop would take its own things from the soil as well as put its own things back. And then the next guy comes along, the next crop would use what that crop gave in. And so they all kind of supported each other. And why you're only growing one crop or one crop animal, cash animal, that's not going to work out right, because it's not a cycle anymore. It's just one thing. And when it's not a cycle, it's just one thing, you're going to have to start going outside a system to get support. And that ends up being like chemical fertilizers. And you're going to have to get bigger machinery. And it's just it's a different cycle. It's a cycle that's requiring way more input than output. And it's degrading all the resources all along and treating people as resources, not as human beings. And that's where the social justice parts comes in. The economic viability, though, is still important. Family farms used to be diversified and they could sustain themselves as well as make money. When they became more about making money, such as in factory farms, you can't compete with a factory farm because its only job is to make money. And as a family, you just can't compete with that. And you see how badly I am wording this whole debate, which I know a lot about. That is where Wendell Berry's genius comes in, because he says it in a way that is super accessible to everyone. And it's really, that's the beauty of the book. If you're not sure, like you want to get organic food, you want to be a sustainable consumer, this book is going to give you the language that you need to say it. Yeah, there's no help for me. Sorry, I talk in circles way too much. I liked some of the other things. One of the ones talks about ecological sustainability will require a complex local culture as the preserver of the necessary knowledge and skill. And this in turn requires a settled, stable, and prosperous local population of farmers and other land users. Because farmers are going to need things, right? They're going to need things that they can't make, as well as at a reasonable cost. One of the problems I know with dairy farms is they're paying modern day costs for things that they need, so 2021 prices, but they get paid in 1970 prices. That money doesn't work. So in order for it to work, you need to have local culture. So the local people should be able to buy goods that they can afford. But also there's give and take, right? The farmers would supply the food to the local people, who in turn make something that the farmers can buy at a reasonable price. And so all of these monoliths that come in and take over your big box stores, your big internet sales companies, that deliver right to your door the next day, they are part of what destroys this, because there's also the issue of quality. It's great that you can get something to your house the next day, but if its quality is complete junk and the earth is polluted in getting it, are you getting ahead at all, or just digging yourself a deeper hole with the new thing you just ordered off the internet? So that the first section is really farming, and it's going to give you the language to talk intelligently. No hope for me, like I say. I did like this other one. Industrial or factory farming also has these problems: soil erosion, soil compaction, soil and water pollution, pests and diseases resulting from the monoculture and ecological deterioration, depopulation of rural communities, and decivilization of the cities. Because if you think you're in a city and this doesn't affect you, you would be completely wrong. Completely wrong. And it's not just that you were not in your city, you're not getting the fresh local produce that you should because there's no little farm right near you because you're in a city. There's way more consequences coming your way from this. You're not as removed. And that's one of the things, most people who, if you're a fan of my channel, you know that I am not a fan of the book Braiding Sweetgrass. Not a fan of it because of some of the things that she says early on. I didn't bother reading the essays at the end because I was very turned off. And one of my points was, she said it was more about the language of Western European settlers. It was versus the language of the Native Americans. And I said then, and I will stick by it, it's people's connection to the land, because because somebody's a Native American doesn't mean that they understand farming and connectiveness to the land. They may still have the language that talks about animals and plants as she and him, but that doesn't mean that they're going to treat them with respect just because their ancestors, like 15 generations back, all lived here. Life doesn't work that way. We can change, we can grow, right? And so one of the things I have said, though, is a connection to the land. And I think the deeper your connection to the land is, the more you get these things, the more you understand them. And you may be like, I live in a city and I have no intention of leaving a city. Yeah, but maybe you can grow some plants. Maybe have some herbs in a windowsill. Maybe grow some little cherry tomatoes, right? That you can eat fresh and have with your basil that you just grew. You could probably grow that on a windowsill or on a little, if you've got a little patio rooftop patio kind of garden thing going on, maybe join a community garden. You can still get involved with the land no matter where you live. Maybe not in Antarctica. I don't know what they have there, but maybe they do. They have those little, you can buy now, it looks like a little boat kind of shaped pot, flower pot. So it's oval and comes up on the sides. Maybe like a tiny little bathtub, like a little tiny clawfoot bathtub. And it comes with these little pods that you can put in a grow light. Now, some of them are so self-sustaining, you just buy the pod and there's probably chemical fertilizers in there. I don't know. But other ones that are very organic, and so that you can learn what soil types your little herbs like. What kind of windows do you the herbs that you like most, do they like southern sun or do they like northern sun? What east, west, what kind of sun do they like? How often do they like being watered? What is the fertilizer that they like being put on that you could use that is more natural than others? And so even if you're growing one tiny little plant, what's really popular now are those succulent gardens. And people are still getting a connection to plants. Now, I don't think that they're getting any food from their succulent plants, but if they're growing an aloe plant, hey, maybe they are. There are some that they could be. So that's just something that's interesting, and you can have that connection realistically anywhere. It's going to be more challenging depending on where you live, or less challenging. But it's part of getting to know the land and the cycles. I think I've talked before about the sustaining tree, my nephew and his wife, and they're looking to build a very ecologically responsible house, and they call their land the land of the laurels. And so they're getting to know, okay, laurels live there, but what other plants are going to live there? What is the soil like up there? Is it going to be a very thirsty soil? Is it going to be, one that soaks it up? Is it going to be damp up there? And so they're not building yet. They're getting to know the land before they build. And I think that's so beautiful and so important. They're going to get to know it. They're going to say, hey, maybe what plants used to live around the laurels, but don't anymore. And we can add back in to improve the land, to restore it to what it used to be. And so I think that's a very, very beautiful thing. And again, so that first part of the book, farming, is going to give you the language of economics, family farm versus factory farm. It's going to give you that language. Part 2 is the farmers, and it starts out talking about 7 Amish farms. So it's a series of essays again about farmers, and they're like case studies, and they are very much like case studies. So you're going to learn what it's like in the life of a family farmer, a small family farmer. You're going to actually get in there and learn it. But it's still a bit technical, like the first part, which is a tiny bit technical, but very accessibly written by Wendell Berry. And so you're going to get to know these farmers and their struggles. The third part is called Food. But what I will tell you is it's essays that are fiction. And what it is, a lot of it is fiction, maybe not all of it, but I think it's all fiction. And it takes you, there's stories that take you into the lives, whereas the other ones could be a little more technical or educational. This is going to be educational by drawing you into this fictional family and how their lives played out. And it's going to have people not just as something as you study, but you're going to build a relationship with these fictional people and get to know them, and you're going to celebrate, like here, it's Christmas 1941, the Christmas after Pearl Harbor. So what is going on in their lives? How does that look for a small farmer? How does farming weave itself into people's lives? And so that's a very important way to end the book, and I think it's an excellent way to end the book. I think it's really beautiful. So you've been given the technical economic side, you've been giving the more personal case study side, and then you're drawn into lives of fictional families. But so you see how it plays out. It's a lovely book. If you're only going to grab one thing by Wendell Berry, this is a great overview of an anthology, and I encourage you to get it. Now, if you go back and watch the book unboxing, you'll know my comments about the format of the book, and also be sure you watch that as well. God bless, friends.